our platform, but our platform is a co-creation, right? We've relied on all of you to think through those 3 anchor programs, and we wouldn't be here today celebrating this event if it weren't for this real partnership, this real collaboration that has happened at many different levels. And so in order for us to grow together, we're unable to do this alone. We don't want to do this alone. We can't, and we owe the region to do it together. So with that, I want to thank, and in the same way that I started, I want to thank all of you for being here, but also with a vision towards implementation. How can we get this off the ground and implement forcefully across countries? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Susana. I would like to now turn to Alfonso Garcia Mora, Vice President for LAC of the IFC.
Thank you very much, honorable ministers, my dear partner in crime, Susana, distinguished guests. It's a big pleasure to be here this morning and to be in this forum, in this table, to talk about a critical topic for the region that we have been talking for many years, for many decades, and we believe that what we are trying to do today, what we are trying to do now in the World Bank Group, together with you, can really be a game changer on how we have approached this sector. And this is really the main statement that I want to start with, because I don't want this to be perceived as a recurrent chat along the same lines that we have done in the past, but really a transformational event, really a transformational initiative that will not succeed if you don't want it to succeed. But if you want this to succeed, you have here us as a partner to make it happen. Many thanks to IICA for hosting us as well. This is, of course, a critical part of this partnership. I don't need to explain you why agriculture is relevant in Latin America, in the Caribbean, in each of your countries. We know that it's one of the most complicated sectors because of many different characteristics, some exogenous factors, some endogenous factors, but things that make the solutions in this sector particularly complicated when you compare with other sectors. No? And that's why the need of bringing the different parts of the stakeholders into the discussion is absolutely critical. That's why a few months ago, the World Bank Group President, as Susana was mentioning, Ajay Banga, launched AgriConnect, which has a very practical objective, as practical as our president is. And the objective is very clear: better connect agriculture to opportunity. The main objective is to connect farmers, particularly smallholders, to competitive value chains, sources of finance, appropriate technology, and risk management tools. Things that we know, we have already talked about them in the past, many times. But we have always tackled all of these different parts individually, not in a holistic way. We have talked about appropriate technology for agri many times. We have talked about sources of finance many times. We have talked about value chains many times. We have talked about risk management and insurance many times. But we need to put all of them together. And this is AgriConnect, a way of putting all these different pieces together to find solutions that can really help us achieve our goals. We need to think how we can, for instance, help our farmers to increase productivity, access to finance, connect to agricultural value chains, help to create jobs, and we know that this is not an easy task. This is not about replacing programs, current programs or strategies. Let me emphasize that. It is really thinking differently about how we interlink and how we link the different programs and strategies that we have. Across the region, governments are investing in infrastructure, research, policy frameworks. All of you know it very well, better than us, the relevance that the agriculture sector has in your country. The private sector is also innovating, and we know that in processing, in logistics, in market access. The issue is how can we connect one and the other more efficiently, more effectively, to maximize our impact. What often happens, in fact, is the fragmentation. Inputs, finance, insurance, markets do not always line up. AgriConnect is designed, again, to integrate all these topics, working with governments, working with stakeholders, working with investors, working even inside of our institution together. And thanks to the commitment of the team, Susana and myself, we have been able to bring together the two parts of the institution of the World Bank Group, the private sector and the public sector. And we have invested a lot of hours, a lot of days. Sometimes with people saying, why am I doing this? I'm losing my time. No, you are not losing your time. You are really going in the direction that we want the world to go, which is the first months or the first days, the net income is negative or is zero. But the net present value is very positive. And we have to work for that net present value, which is a call that I do to all of you. We know that if we focus on our day-to-day, we will be more success today. But we know that the net present value of that focus on what we are doing today, instead of having the strategic, catalytic, or vision, will not maximize the net present value of this strategy. And this is exactly what we really want to go. I don't need to, many of you know IFC, we are trying to do this, and we have very nice investments in different parts of the region. In Colombia, with cacao, in Brazil, with lácteos and Natura, with forestry, in Ecuador, with rice. We have very good interventions, but these are just one intervention. We want to move from one intervention, from one investment, to a market impact, to a systemic impact. And for that, the private sector needs the public sector. And the public sector, to be effective, need those investments from the private sector. We do in the World Bank Group. You do in your own countries. And the timing is critical. Susanna was mentioning the 1.2 billion young people in developing countries that will be entering into the workforce. Give me a couple of data points more that actually I was shocked when I read them because I didn't know. Global demand for food will grow by 30% in 2050, 30%. And about 80% of all the food is produced by family farmers. 80%. I was not aware of that number. I'm sure that you are, but I was not. 80% of the food is produced by farmers, by family farmers. So the solutions cannot be just focused on one specific agribusiness company or on isolated initiatives. Really need to be cascade down to the family farmers. 85% or 500 million of them are smallholder farmers, often poor, relying on traditional production methods, leading to large yield gaps with incapacity to have the insurance coverage, totally susceptible to whatever happens with the climate shocks. We need to find solutions for those. And I think I'm very happy to see our colleagues from ALASA and the formalization of the cooperation agreement that we will do later today. So the private sector role is central, we know that, but the private sector role needs to be thought and needs to be brought in the context of a bigger strategy, in a context of a policy and bigger strategy, not just on the context of maximizing the P&L and the bottom line of each of the companies. If we do that, that needs to happen, it's a necessary condition, bien sûr. Otherwise the private sector will never invest. But we need to do that in a context of maximizing the impact, market impact that it will create. Partnerships matter. Susanna mentioned that. We are particularly happy to have the formalization of the cooperation with ALASA, expanding access to agricultural insurance and risk management tools, also with IICA, strengthening technical collaboration and capacity building in support to AgriConnect. These agreements are targeted responses to challenges that repeatedly emerge, from climate volatility to uneven access to financial services. This roundtable is also meant to be a working discussion, as I said before, and we are particularly eager to listen from all of you on what do you think about this initiative and if we are going in the direction that you believe we can be more successful. Let me close with one reflection, which is something that Susanna has already mentioned. The ambition of AgriConnect is to narrow the gap between farmers and producers, and large producers. To narrow the gap requires three things: access, connection, finance. Access, connection, connectivity, finance. Those three things require public and private solutions. Cannot be done either with one or isolated or with the other. From the World Bank Group, you have a committed partner in that effort. The World Bank Group is totally committed. This is one of the priority programs of the institution, and therefore I'm particularly happy to start the spring meetings with this relevant event together with my dear colleague Susanna. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alfonso. I would like to now turn to Mohamed Ibrahim, Director General of IICA.
Good morning, honorable ministers, esteemed guests. I would like to recognize Mr. Susana Cordero Guerra, Vice President of LAC, and Mr. Alfonso Garcia Mora, Vice President of LAC IFC. It's a great pleasure to be here welcoming all of you to this event, which once again recognizes and highlights the vital and strategic importance of the agriculture sector in Americas, which are playing an important role in responding to global food security and nutrition. On behalf of IICA and on my own behalf, I would like to congratulate the World Bank Group on its initiative to place family farmers and the agriculture sector at the center of the opportunities countries have to create more and better jobs. This is a strategic area where IICA has been working on over the last decades. In Latin America and the Caribbean, investing in the agri-food sector is one of the most effective ways to generate more and better jobs on a large scale while responding to multiple objectives as the triple planetary crisis which is in discussion. This is very important for us because it produces 25% of the GDP in some of the countries and a third of the employment linked to the agriculture sector in many countries. Agriculture is central to our country's growth and to ensuring that this growth is inclusive. At IICA, we always say that together we are more than the sum of other parts. That is why I also want to congratulate the World Bank Group, because AgriConnect, not just about ambitious goals and new scalable solutions, it is also about joint actions and partners committed to agriculture and rural development. We have seen many institutional initiatives that were short-lived precisely because the challenges are numerous and acting in isolation prevent us from overcoming these challenges. The challenges and opportunities that AgriConnect presents for Latin America and the Caribbean are enormous. The initiative aims to connect 60 million farmers in the region with markets and value chains, creating more better jobs. And to achieve this goal, we need everyone's efforts, the governments, the private sector, and the development partners working towards the same objective. Latin America and the Caribbean still have high rates of rural poverty. Initiatives such as AgriConnect to support family farmers will have powerful and positive impacts on reducing these needs, generating new opportunities, and elevating the status of agriculture activity. Finally, let me state that IICA's participation in the implementation and execution of AgriConnect should be understood first and foremost as natural because the initiative is closely linked to the institution's DNA. Family farming is the dominant force in agriculture in Latin America, and the Caribbean accounts for the vast majority of rural producers. The sector consists of more than 60 million family farms and about 60 million people, indicating that this is the backbone of rural life and key to regional food security. We must devote a significant portion of our efforts to ensuring that this sector has access to markets, financing, technology and innovation, and infrastructure. Unlocking its productivity is key to the competitiveness, resilience, and economic growth of our countries. That is why, thank you, World Bank Group, for the opportunity. At IICA, we are committed to using all our experience and technical expertise to achieve and deliver results through this great partnership for the benefit of our countries and our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. I would now like to move to the remarks by our partners who are joining us today, beginning with Pedro Martel, Division Head for LAC of IDB.
Hello, thanks, you caught me off guard. So thanks again. We do this in English or Spanish, either way, right? Okay. So we'll do it in Spanish if it's okay. Gracias.
Thank you very much once again for the invitation and the joint work we've done together. It is important to highlight the opportunity we have here. We have to think together, as President Garcia Mora has shared. We're connecting producers, markets, the private sector, and the public sector. This is not a matter we have been avoiding. As the President has shared, we've been thinking about this.
You know, you get into these rabbit holes and you start working on, I'm going to solve this particular problem with this project. And we all feel happy at the end of the day because we achieved the goal of solving that particular problem. But we forget the whole. And I think that's the call that we're getting from this AgriConnect initiative. Let's not forget the whole. Let's think about how we work on what we know how to do, because we're very good. We're all very good at doing these things. I mean, it's not accidental that we're here. Ministers, development agencies, we've been doing this for a while. We do it well. We find solutions to problems, but we forget about the whole sometimes because we are driven that way. So when we're asked to go and think about creatively how to put together both private sector, finance solutions, the traditional infrastructure investments towards that same goal of connecting farmers to achieve better results, both for the farmers and for society as a whole, that's actually our mandate. So we're just being recalled to do what we need to do, but thinking together. And so that's a great opportunity, and I don't want to pass this opportunity without saying that market finance, like you said, infrastructure, fine. We are at the verge of a technological breakthrough regarding digital technologies and artificial intelligence. We should embrace it. We should not push it back. Embrace it to really achieve that goal of connecting farmers through at a lower cost and more efficiently. So this is what's new, because it was mentioned some things are not new, but this is new. AI, digital technologies, financial markets, new solutions, those things are new. And so we need to embrace those, push forth, and contribute in that way to improving productivity in the region, which is our main challenge as of today. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Pedro. Can we now turn to Juan Carlos Cortés, President of ELASA?
Buen día.
Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to begin by saying that it is a privilege to be here, and I would like to thank the World Bank Group for the invitation. I am very happy and I feel very enthusiastic about this initiative. I am a farmer, a producer in a family that has been participating in the agricultural sector for 140 years. And listening to Alfonso and Susana makes me feel very happy, because it is true that we have heard about many initiatives over many years. Our challenge is to make them happen, to execute them, to see a structural change, to make this go beyond people and institutions within a certain context. We want to change the market structures. That is the challenge. And here I am witnessing an initiative that I believe has that possibility. The presence of ministers here ratifies that. The fact that we have the ministers of agriculture are signaling a change that also makes me feel enthusiastic. I would also like to thank IICA for hosting. The fact that the World Bank Group altogether is supporting this along with IICA shall make a difference. I think It's important to know that we all agree on the diagnosis because, as Alfonso shared, we do not always agree on what the problem is, as I understood it. And we have to ensure that we can feed all in our region, especially in our region. Of course, poverty affects the agricultural sector. That's half of the problem. And of course, the solution comes through this as well, because this is something that can be affected more quickly than any other. If we improve 1 ton on production, then you are also improving their income. It is, of course, also something that generates income. It is as important to export in agriculture as it is to export televisions. And the economy of our region goes through the agriculture sector. There are many opportunities there, and it is, of course, closely linked to technology. Yesterday, I was sharing with some friends that just a generation ago, half of those in the agricultural sector did not know how to read and write. Now, everyone does, and everyone has one of these. This is a deep structural change that is closely connected to technology. And I feel very enthusiastic to see how important finance is becoming to the agricultural sector. We can have the best seeds, the best advice, but if we don't have the cash flow with the correct pricing, then it's game over for everyone. We need to see that capital infusion and to ensure that all the small producers are also part of the formal markets, because is a 20% interest rate very high? Of course it is if it's monthly, but we can change that to yearly. There are many other factors. Climate change is, of course, a big challenge for the future. It is changing the genetics of our crops. Now we are changing the dates in which we plant and harvest. So there we have a change. We have to see how things change over time. The markets are not perfect. I am also a businessman. What are we facing? We are facing regulatory markets and frameworks that are distorted. We see policies that are erratic, that may not know the sector. We are facing large transaction costs. The initiative signals that these are things that we must tackle. And how? How will we do it? Acknowledging that we must work with public-private partnerships, it's important. This is a milestone because the private sector and the government on their own cannot tackle this. I think as an initiative, acknowledging this, it's important. The importance of the private sector and the finance sector are important. We're talking about insurance. We need guarantees. We need the banking and non-banking system are able to participate with a regulatory framework that not puts it at risk its capital, and it's not punished when it decides to invest, which is why the importance of this influence as a group with the support of the World Bank Group by defining the regulatory framework and defining policies in the different systems for subsidies. It's important. Insurance to ensure the flow of capital to the agro sector is, of course, important. It is key to the structural change. And technology is also key. What is being proposed by the World Bank Group to support the private sector to generate databases, new instruments, so that we can reach new horizons, so that we can connect to satellite systems for which there are already agreements to reduce transaction costs, will not make the private sector more efficient, but will really exponentially permit it to grow. I think the combination with the World Bank Group and the participation of the IFC, because I see that the fact that Dr. Alfonso is so enthusiastic about this sector is key. What can we do from ALASA? Well, we have been building together and we can cooperate. We can cooperate so that the World Bank Group will help us with the regulatory framework, so that the World Bank Group help us ensure that the policies of those in office can ensure stability in the long term. ALASA can cooperate with the IFC in the co-financing of the development of new instruments that are revolutionizing the agro-insurance sector. The fact that we can develop new instruments dealing with the technology and satellites, this is all very important. The IFC instruments are key. As Alfonso shared, the fact that we can share investment that will now have perhaps a negative balance, but their future will be extremely relevant because we will see results. And these are not just crazy dreams. These are clear objectives. We are here to ratify that we are feeling very enthusiastic at this. And we want to be part of, well, we've been invited to, but now we demand to remain present. We want to be here with you. All of those of us here present, we have to ensure that this happens, because if we don't tackle this directly, we will fail. The initiative itself, if it's not implemented, it will fail. We have to ensure that this continues despite who is here. We have to generate a structural change. We have to have a clear agenda that it's accurate with indicators that we can measure, and that is how things will take place. This has to continue even when we're not here. Congratulations, Susana, Mohammed. Thank you for the initiative, and thank you for inviting us.
Muchas gracias, señor Juan Carlos.
Thank you, Mr. Juan Carlos.
Katia Krivonos, Chief of the FAO Investment Center in LAC.
Gracias, Lea. Como Pedro, yo también he estado confundida si hablar en español o en inglés.
Like Pedro, I wasn't sure to speak in English or Spanish.
Very nice to see you again, Minister Floyd. So I will actually speak in English because I think that will make it easier for all. Thank you very much for this invitation, dear colleagues from the World Bank Group and IICA. And I would like to begin by highlighting that our collaboration with the World Bank from FAO side, it's not new. It's a partnership that has evolved for over 60 years, and over this time we have contributed globally to actually 1,300 projects in 134 countries, and mobilizing investment in about 210 billion in investments. I mean, we're talking about 60 years working in agriculture and agri-food systems. Of course, in Latin America, it's less than in other regions because Asia and Africa are big regions for the World Bank. Nevertheless, we have done also a lot together in Latin America and the Caribbean. Beyond these numbers, what I think truly matters is what we have built together over this time. What we are creating is, through our partnership, is enabling how we work with governments, private sector, producers to improve the quality and also volume of investments. So I think we had a very strategic part to play as FAO in making sure that this portfolio grows and the projects really achieve their goals. Collaboration is built on very clear complementarities between our institutions. FAO brings technical knowledge, data, evidence, and really deep understanding of agri-food systems, which also include foundations like land, water, soil. So the World Bank brings financing, scale, innovative solutions. Together, we have built a partnership that not only mobilizes resources, but also directs it what most needed. Over time, the focus has evolved. What has started in the 60s with focus on productivity because we all were concerned with feeding the world. Now, over these decades, it has really evolved to rural development in its broader sense, infrastructure, value chains, productive alliances, innovative finance, agri-tech. So clearly, this portfolio has grown, and it helps us also to address the challenges of today. One thing has not changed, and that is that this partnership is built on our commitment to countries, our multidisciplinary approach, and really deep understanding that knowledge is a key de-risking factor when it comes to investments in agriculture, which is inherently risky. So AgriConnect represents a very clear opportunity in Latin America, and the priorities that have been mentioned today is agricultural finance, market access, ag technologies. These are actually very, very well aligned with what we're already doing together, the World Bank Group and FAO. For example, in innovative finance, we have supported the design of a forest fund in Paraguay that seeks to combine World Bank seed financing with impact funds, with impact capital, creating new investment opportunities. In trade, I think our recent work has focused more on unlocking opportunities for Central American coffee producers and exporters to comply with the EU regulation that is increasingly focusing on deforestation-free and sustainability and green trade. And also we have been working together, for example, in the Dominican Republic on competitiveness of bananas and cocoa. So this is just a couple of examples. In the digital space, we are collaborating in Peru in developing a project aimed at improving farmers' access to digital services, for information, for extension. And the ultimate goal of these investments is not just to produce more with less environmental footprint, but as we all heard today, it's more and more on jobs and creating opportunities along all the value chains, from production to logistics, processing, trade. These all generate jobs. So AgriConnect is a tremendous potential, and we can accelerate together this impact as a long-standing partners. I think we're well prepared. We are already doing this work, so we can strengthen our initiatives to really work more on competitiveness of family farmers, leveraging our knowledge, our experience together with working, for example, on productive alliances and connecting producers to markets. And in short, we're not starting from zero. So we already have the experience, the tools, the knowledge, the partnerships, and we're very happy to be here. And AgriConnect is a huge opportunity to take this work to next level. Thanks.
Thank you, Katia. Finally, may I invite Rocio Medina, Regional Director of LAC at IFAD, to share her comments.
Good morning, and really thank you very much for this invitation and be part of this conversation. Definitely, from the perspective of Latin America and the Caribbean, it's very encouraging to see this initiative led by the World Bank Group, together with our partners, the IDB, FAO, and now also IICA and LASA joining efforts. And I think it's really important, and it was highlighted in the introductions, and to avoid to be fragmented and actually have a shared agenda and to be better aligned with what we're doing, and also in order to scale up what we do. And I think this is a call that they will definitely, all the governments and clients and our beneficiary, the region, will definitely look for. Let me just start with something simple. I mean, in terms of IFAD, it's an institution that works directly with the small-scale rural producers. That's our mandate. And we work where others definitely often cannot reach, with populations that are really frequently excluded from financial system, markets, and public policy. And that's exactly what makes us a natural partner for AgriConnect. This initiative is about transforming food systems, and that will only happen if the small-scale producers are at the center. And it was highlighted by President Garcia Mora in their introductions. And that's where IFAD comes in. In our region, the challenge is not only about increasing productions, because we already know how to do it, but the real challenge is how to ensure that small-scale producers are integrated into a dynamic rural economies where they have access to finance, access to markets, and can generate sustainable incomes. So for Latin America and the Caribbean, AgriConnect is not just another global initiative. It's a practical tool, and we see it that way, to address a very concrete bottlenecks on the ground. From IFAD, we are contributing to this initiative with a clear commitment to reach at least 70 million small-scale producers worldwide by 2030. Currently, our portfolio in the region already includes investments that are expected to reach more than 1 million additional people in rural areas in the coming years through our ongoing projects. But this is not just about volume. This is also how the region can add value. And because in Latin America and the Caribbean, we are developing and testing models that are central to this agenda and can be replicated elsewhere. For instance, how to work with the national development banks to expand rural finance, how to mobilize private sector investment, that I think it was reiterated by each of our different panels that had talked before, and how to connect producers to markets in a sustainable way. And this is already taking shape. And just to give some examples, for instance, in Brazil, we're working with the World Bank to better align the portfolio toward family farmer, with a strong focus not only on financing, but also how effectively bring the private sector. In Ecuador, we are designing an initiative where the private sector is not a complement, but the main delivery channel, with CFAT playing a catalytic role, helping create the conditions that the model can work. We're also conducting an analytical work to create financial products for public development banks to expand access to finance for small-scale producers. Based on it, we are now moving from analysis to pilot interventions in Bolivia, and we see a strong opportunity to build this work with the World Bank and other partners in other countries. So one thing is becoming very clear from our experience in the region. The main challenge is not only about financial resources, it's how the system functions, it's how finance is structured, how incentives are aligned, and how different actors work together. So from IFAD, our commitment is very clear, is to continue bringing this agenda to the last mile, to ensure that the small-scale producers are not left behind, and how to work with you, with the governments, with the private sector, civil society, academia, to translate this initiative in concrete results on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rocio. This concludes contributions from our partners. Thank you again for being here. I would like to now turn to the presentation of the AgriConnect initiative. This will be given by Anup Jagwani, Director of Farming and Agribusiness at the World Bank Group, together with Diego Arias, Regional Manager of Agriculture and Food of the LAC region at the World Bank.
We have some slides. Should I get Sophia? Anup, you want to start?
I can kick it off while the slides are being put up. Good morning. I think we're still at the morning. Yes. Thank you, first of all, to Excellencies, ministers, and partners for being here with us today. This, I was just telling Alfonso, after his comments, you've made my job much easier. And listening to all of you, it was as if you were in the room when we started crafting this about 1.5 years ago. We, together with Maktar Diop, the MD at the IFC, he brought a cross-functional group together, cross-World Bank group together to say, how can we make a difference? And what is different? So to the point that was made earlier, Pedro mentioned, and we've heard, on the knowledge part, as you will see some of the presentation, you will see the comments that you have made yourself as to how it all comes together in this. And what was different was two things, essentially. Internally, we, working together as the World Bank Group, that was fundamentally seen as a powerful way to do it, and working with partners. And the second piece was the technology piece. Really, that has been, and Juan Carlos pointed this out, technology has really changed how, although agriculture still remains the least digitized sector of all. So, but here is an opportunity for us to do things differently and do different things. I always make that distinction. So we need the new products, we need the new tools, and we need to work together much more effectively. And technology and bringing us together in this is a key part of that. So And going back, there was three key fundamental pillars as the World Bank Group. We call 3x5. You heard the 3x5, both from Alfonso and Susanna. The three key building blocks: the foundational principles, the policy change, and then the mobilizing capital. And then you have the 5 different sectors, and agriculture is a key part of that. What we're looking at as a job creator. And as we looked at it closely, the job creation is not necessarily on farm itself. It is around all the resilience that can be brought to the farming business, which is inherently risky. With all the tools that we can bring, whether it's the hybrid seeds, whether it's knowledge, technology, whether it's irrigation, extension services, there are all these areas that jobs can be created. And this is the fundamental part that we need to recognize, and which is what is different in this. So I realize it's still taking some time to put up the presentation. I'm going to run into the presentation, and we don't need the slides necessarily, so you have the key aspects to it. So there were 6 key scalable solutions that we came up with. Policy was a fundamental one, and some of you have touched on that. Juan Carlos touched on that. Policy is fundamental to recognizing how there's $800 billion in subsidies being provided to the sector globally. How can we use that more effectively? How can we channel that subsidy to get climate smart agriculture going? So this was a key part of how we engage policy. The second part is infrastructure. And this is thinking beyond agriculture itself. When we looked at it, we said this is needs an integrated approach, integrated by all the other sectors that are working in this space, and that's important to have. So when these conversations that we're having internally in the World Bank Group are not just within the agri team and both World Bank and IFC, we're having with the other verticals, as we call them, infrastructure, with education, what are each one is doing to advance this, and that's the integrated approach that becomes extremely important. Right? The third piece here is the knowledge piece, and it was just pointed out earlier, I think I heard Juan Carlos Hectorina in terms of knowledge. What is that knowledge difference? It's just financing is important, but knowledge. I'm reminded of a moment when we'd helped a farmer install drip irrigation systems, and he couldn't see the water flowing. He actually took a little can to put water on the plants because just the knowledge piece is extremely important in this. The fourth piece is around finance, mobilizing capital. This becomes extremely important in this context, that we really need this capital to, and it's not just, and we'll have a session here later today. It's not just providing financing to farmers. The key part is de-risking. And the insurance piece becomes extremely important in this. And that is clearly a public-private area, because nowhere in the world have I seen a purely commercial private model on agri-insurance. So this is where the public and private sector has to come together to really build that ecosystem that builds resilience for farmers. The second last piece, the fifth one, is the aggregation models. This is helping either the co-ops, working with the co-ops that provide the access to market for farmers, provide sometimes the inputs, the tools, and these aggregation models, where private companies do that, but this is what we need to strengthen to help farmers get access to market, get access to tools and inputs, and sometimes finance, embedded finance as we call it. Last but not the least, and is often a cross-cutting issue, is the technology piece. This is the technology piece needs to get much deeper. We need to have bundled agtech solutions. We're looking at what we call digital public infrastructure, DPI. It's not just the physical infrastructure of DPI. Now we have the phones, as was pointed out. We have that phone is there, but the farmer registry, the digital farmer registry that will allow so that we can cascade solutions more specifically to the farmer. As we think in medicine, we're thinking of very specialized medicine, tailored solutions to each person. Same way in the agri space, we can do the same. So the importance of technology, and then of course technology, whether it's seed, and as this is a global initiative, we looked at it, and in every context, we're going to need a different bundle of solutions. In some cases, we just don't have hybrid seed. In the case of sub-Saharan Africa, we don't have adequate hybrid seed adoption. We need to scale that. So that's an important piece. So the technology package that will go in will be different for different regions. We can go to the next slide, and I think it'll go on. So this is just to give you a snapshot of what the World Bank Group has been doing. How we came up with this target. We said 300 million farmers globally together with our partners, 200 million for the World Bank itself. Business as usual would have got us to 100 million. And we said, no, we need to have a stretch target, and that's where we put 200 million. We didn't know how. This is part of the how in this conversation with you. But we put an ambitious target for us to reach in this space. And the challenges in the sector are enormous. Most of you know, 327 million people with increased food security by 2030. We're seeing from the crisis and the war in Iran, probably 45 million people will move into the bucket of food insecure as well, in addition to 330 million. So this is a challenge. And these shocks, whether it's El Nino, which is expected, and these shocks compound the problems for the sector. So building resilience, while we can work at the farm level, it's also financial instruments that will help us there. Can you go to the next slide? With this, I'm going to pass on to Diego to take us through the Latin American context on AgriConnect. Thank you, Diego.
Thank you, Anup. Next slide. So this is the challenge there in terms of size. Director General Ibrahim already mentioned the 16 million farmers, family farmers, and their distribution in the continent. And on the right, we have the number of jobs. And so here our challenge is not just in reaching number of family farmers, smallholder farmers, but also in those countries where family farming and agriculture matter the most and have a larger impact. Next slide, please. So the three pillars that Susana and Alfonso mentioned at the beginning on the foundations, the policy reforms, and the mobilization of private capital. For us in Latin America and the Caribbean, we are focusing on three areas. Anup mentioned several solution areas already, but we believe that in terms of the challenges and opportunities of family farming in Latin America and the Caribbean, the agri-finance agenda, which does not only include credit, but includes other financial instruments like guarantees and insurance, is what is going to make that change be scalable. So linking the technologies, the skills, the trading opportunities with finance is what is going to allow us to reach scale till 2030. The second is the agriculture trade opportunities and market access for family farming. Today, there are some sub-regions within Latin America and the Caribbean that have suboptimal intra-regional trade. So it's easier to import or export to the US, Europe, or from Brazil, but within the sub-region, it's more difficult to trade. And here, the Caribbean countries have a commitment specifically on this, on improving and increasing the intra-regional trade. So trade policy here is very important on tariff and non-tariff barriers and services. And then the final is the digital technologies, the artificial intelligence that was already mentioned, but also the sustainable agriculture practices that are going to make all these changes last because of climate change, but because of other environmental risks. Next. So I want to quickly share before we move on to hear the ministers of agriculture on the example of Brazil, which was the first country where we've done an action plan. Next slide, please. And here in Brazil, as with government, with partner organizations and private sector, the focus is on the north and northeast, where there's the highest number of family farmers, but also where there is also a larger potential for growth-oriented value chains that can help transform family farming in the region. And these have been identified with private sector on cocoa, coffee, where there's an unmet demand for such products, as well as the growth in agroforestry and bioeconomy in these two regions. Horticulture, mainly for domestic market, and exports and dairy have been identified. So you can see that the action plans are not all inclusive, but really focus on where we can see short-term transformation at scale. The target here is 1 million farmers, which is about 60% of family farming in this region. Is an ambitious target, but a doable one. And so we are here proposing to focus on farmer income, but also on the more and better jobs, like Director General Mohammed mentioned. All of this bringing a global value chain approach. And in the case of Brazil, but I'm also looking at our colleagues from Guyana, for example, improving global food security. So this would have an impact also in other international food markets. Next. The ideas and the proposals being put forward in these action plans are really grounded on trying to address the most basic market failures that we've been observing in the family farming sector, which include the high systemic risks, which are enhanced now with the climate variations, incomplete markets, the high transaction costs, and how banks, insurance companies, and agro producers do not have the same information as farmers have in order to manage risks and provide financing. So these have been identified as the key market failures to be addressed. And in the case of Brazil, the risking instruments is one of the 3 key interventions, enhancing value chains and agro-logistics through public-private partnerships of anchor companies and agribusinesses, so not just on the public investment in these infrastructures, but on the maintenance, operations and maintenance done by their own agribusiness companies operating in that sector at scale. And then on the digitizing agro-services, my colleague Pedro from IDB already mentioned that have really the potential to transform the way technical assistance and extension services are provided and the way we do agriculture innovation going forward. Next. So these are the 3 interventions, and you'll see at the bottom this is done with private sector across the board, and it's not just about investments. We talked about the need for policy reform on the agriculture, reinsurance, and insurance markets. At times, these products are treated as a regular insurance product, and this is not conducive for the market development. The same thing with some of the new digital technologies or the bio-input market, for example, that requires specific regulation for it to develop and for private sector to come in. So these 3 are the interventions. You see that there's not a long list of activities, but really activities that are potentially scalable in the family farming segment. Next. These are the consultations that we had, both from public and private sector. Next. And this is the next one, please. It's the timeline of how this will be implemented till 2030. I'm going to finish before I hand over to Jorge Vartain, who's advisor to IICA, who's going to help moderate the panel with the ministers. Is this last slide? There's no more slides? No? One more? Okay, these are the countries where we have action plans. Mexico is still in draft. That's why it's not ready yet, but we can definitely share the Brazil, Jamaica, and Ecuador ones. Next one. And these are the countries that are coming up, including many that are here: Honduras, Bolivia, Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala, Peru, Dominican Republic, and Colombia. So this is all to say that, next slide, please, that this is done with partners. We have today the signing of the partnership with IICA and ALASA. IDB partnership is also coming up. And then we have IFAD, FAO, Google, Co-Develop, and Bayer in the private sector. These are global agreements that already exist, and then potential future partners also in the pipeline. Thanks again, and Jorge, over to you.
Well, good morning, everybody. Bon dia, Silvia. It is a privilege for me to moderate this conversation on an initiative that speaks directly to one of the most pressing challenges in our region: how to effectively support smallholder farmers in an increasingly complex global context. And what makes AgriConnect particularly relevant in its integrated vision is the way that has been formulated, the way that was put forward, and the way that they look for the partnership. This AgriConnect reflects a new model of cooperation, and this is very important because we are talking about a new model of cooperation in a moment where multilateral cooperation is really very much criticized, and we need to have answers, and we need to show that multilateral cooperation, that the alliance between the different institutions, which are represented here and many others, can work together and serve the country better. And this is something that the World Bank is calling us to do and help to find a way in working together. With this comment, I would like to give the floor to the ministers, we are here, and I will ask our friend, the minister from Bolivia, Alfonso Garcia Mora. Please, your intervention, Minister, and we are trying to apply 10 minutes for each of the ministers in order to be able to continue with the discussion after that.
You made me Minister of Bolivia. I'm very, very touched for that, but
Jorge, I think you meant the Minister of Bolivia, Justiniano? Yeah.
Yeah. What happened is, Alfonso, I like so much your intervention that I want you to repeat it. And then, since you don't want to repeat it, I'm going to call Oscar Mario Justiniano, Ministry of Development and Agriculture from Bolivia. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Please, I want to speak in Spanish. It's easier for me. Desde Bolivia.
In Bolivia, we are focusing on our efforts in creating value chains focused on smallholder producers because, as it's been said, that's where our big production numbers are concentrated. Even though as a country, our policy has been focused on production, but lacking structure in support necessary for that production to be based on market studies, both national and international. And it's been disconnected because it hasn't had ways of accessing in different channels and strategic communication so it can access sanitation, water treatments, and basically all the structure that production of this kind needs. And of course, committed with what a fluent, easily flowing relationship with the rest of the world would need. That's what has changed. That's the vision that we have now in Bolivia. And of course, President Rodrigo Paz has that vision. And as proof of his commitment, he unified 3 different portfolios under one ministry: rural development, water resources, and industry, That consolidation has given this new ministry the opportunity to be here. Bolivia decided to consolidate these three different departments in one ministry so that its vision doesn't have to be reaching out constantly to other ministries, but it's all held in-house. Of course, healthcare, education, and infrastructure are areas that not only improve but also ameliorate conditions for everybody, but they're part of this framework. Having said that, we are very interested in focusing on the first part, adding value to the value chain, in the first part, and access to market. We're clear on that. We need to produce whatever it is that our society and the world demands. And that's why we are creating very specific actions in the country, working with foreign relations minister and in exportations. However, for us, a sustainable and competitive development of value chains is a priority. To generate development clusters, this is how we, who come from the private sector, understand this. To create these clusters, we need to also distribute them equitably in the country. It is important that it's sustainable, but it also has to be distributed equitably in the country, and this can be done with technology. And that gives us an in to talk about the increase of productivity, obviously going hand in hand with technology, and in strengthening supply chains and value chains at origin. And this goes hand in hand with what Bolivia considers very important, which is as it's a country that
Hoy, para habilitar
as it's a landlocked country that has been neglected in many ways, we need to work on logistics. And this is not just something that is aspirational as a producing country, it's a need also, and a need for the whole continent. In our country, you can go from the Pacific to the Atlantic. This is something that we already discussed with President Lula in Brazil, something that we discussed with President Karst in Chile. And, if you want to be as close possible to Brazil, we are that mid-step. And if you want to get closer to Chile, we are also there. We are the logical mid-step. And that connection, because we are at the very heart of the continent, that means that we need to work on a better connected infrastructure. And of course, we need to make the most of commercial flows so that we can restructure without any major additional costs. We think there are some areas of great potential. The soy industry, the bovine industry. These two markets have great potential for growth in Bolivia. And in our expectations and projections that we've made with the FAO and also with IICA, we see great potential in Amazonic fruits. We see 10%, also Andean grains, coffee and cacao, and coffee and cocoa. Cocoa being Amazonian and mostly wild origin is great. We have also great potential to 5 to 6 in camelids, and also great areas of possible potential like wine culture. So for this, I'm not just talking about areas of production. I'm talking about clusters that could be integrated with countries in which we are not quite competition, but we could complement them. So to conclude, we are very interested in seeing out of all the initiatives that will be discussed today, which ones can be structured and transformed into something tangible? Because we have certain needs, especially in the rural area. We know that in the world, the depopulation of the rural world is a fact. 75% of the population is concentrated in 3 cities out of the 9 biggest departments. And we have low expectations when it comes to how many young people will actually work in the fields, because these young people don't feel that their future will actually reflect the work of their parents or those who came before them. And this means that we need to think long and hard about this. We need to create a connection between the digital world and technology and, of course, financing, as we have talked about it. It needs to be connected and oriented towards a vision of growth, either on increased productivity or the growth of supply chains. And these things are very important to have a better population distribution and making the most of Bolivia's great potential. To conclude, Bolivia has, and this is particular to our history, is going through a great change in its cycle. We are coming from a very severe crisis that was exacerbated in contrast with the rest of Latin America, but it's related to what politics and the narrative that imperated in the country for 20 years. So we're at the end of a cycle and at the beginning of a new one, and it's a beginning with a lot of challenges, and we know that these challenges will be overcome through these kinds of meetings, through these kinds of support and these kinds of initiatives. These kinds of support are key, because this is what's being debated in the world. It's being and we want to solve the problems that we have, and we know that we will be able to do so with your support. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Well, if I attempt to give the floor to Alfonso, he's going to say no.
You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Excellencies, officials from the World Bank, my counterpart. I want to speak not only as the Minister of Guyana from Agriculture, but as the chairman of the Ministerial Task Force. Bear in mind that I have my brother here from Jamaica, who might have a Jamaican perspective to his contribution also, but we share one goal and one objective in the Caribbean. And today, on behalf of the region, this point stands as a crucial time in the turning point of the Caribbean in its agriculture and food security journey. This AgriConnect initiative comes at a time when the Caribbean must confront fundamental realities, what we are facing as a region. We remain heavily dependent on imported food, leaving our economies and our people vulnerable to shocks that is not sustainable and is not acceptable. The Caribbean region today is a region that is very disaster prone. We have seen what has happened recently with Jamaica, and my brother from Jamaica will give us his experience because we knew we were all involved in it. So AgriConnect offers a framework for transformation. It challenges us to move beyond traditional agriculture and towards a more integrated system, one that connects farmers to market, to finance, and to modern technology. And as Mr. Alfonso would have summarized it in 3 main words: access, connect, and finance. The entire system with this AgriConnect reflects in these 3 words.
As we move forward, one of the most important areas in agriculture in the Caribbean is technology. And we have heard all the presentation refer to it. And when you look at the 6 scalable intervention that was made just now, it reflects in those areas: policy, infrastructure, knowledge, finance, aggregation, and technology. All 6 areas it reflects. So AgriConnect offers a framework for transformation. It challenges us to move beyond traditional agriculture towards a more integrated system, one that connects farmers to market, to finance, and to modern technology. In essence, it calls for the development of strong, resilient agriculture value chain. From a CARICOM perspective, this vision aligns directly with our regional priorities in the CARICOM. We have already committed to reducing our food import bill by 25% by 2030 and strengthening our regional food production. However, ambition must not be matched. This ambition must now be matched with coordinated action. And here we have a chance to move beyond what we are saying now, rhetoric, directly into action. Guyana, in this regard, is uniquely positioned. We heard Mr. Diego refer to it. With its extensive land and water resources, it has the capacity to play a leading role in regional food production, notwithstanding my brother from Jamaica, because we know Jamaica has been involved in a number of areas in production. We have been working very closely. But let me be clear, Guyana cannot and should not stand alone. What we require is a truly integrated regional approach where production, processing, and distribution are shared across member states. And this here will help us tremendously in those areas. AgriConnect supports this approach in several critical ways. First, it promotes stronger market linkages. For CARICOM, this means improving interregional trade. We heard about the non-tariff barriers that we are working on now very aggressively. Right in the CARICOM, we have a single market. We have a body, a regional body, but we still have problems with non-tariff barriers. When you export to Trinidad, you have to go with a different level than when you export to Jamaica. So we need to move beyond that. We need to move beyond that. So for CARICOM, this means improving interregional trade so that food produced within our region can move more efficiently to where it is needed. Secondly, it expands across access to financing. That's a serious problem in the Caribbean. And we heard about family farmers. The Caribbean has a substantial numbers of family farmers. And there are serious problems in terms of financing for these family farmers, in terms of finding market access. And this here will play a very critical role. And I want to be upfront. I see Jamaica is moving a lot in terms from the regional level. The region, Guyana, will definitely be part of this. And I am moving that at our next meeting, the CARICOM Ministerial Task Force meeting, I will ensure that we pursue this matter. So as a bloc, as a region, we move forward to embrace it fully. Many of our farmers, as I said, lack financing. Without addressing this constraint, transformation remains out of reach for these smallholding farmers and family farmers. Third, it emphasizes infrastructure, and we heard that just now in the presentation, infrastructure, storage, transportation, and agro-processing. These are not optional investment. They are essential if we are to reduce losses, improve efficiency, and compete globally as a region. However, while we welcome initiatives such as AgriConnect, we must also confront our internal challenges. So we are having an initiative here set up by the World Bank together with partner with IICA. But as a region, we must confront the internal challenges. I just mentioned just now what are some of the challenges we are faced with. We must address the barriers that limit our trade within the region. There are several barriers I refer to. We must harmonize standards, improve logistics, and remove inefficiencies that undermine our progress. And importantly, we must build resilience in the face of climate change. which continues to threaten our agricultural system. Equally critical also is the need to engage our youth. For example, in Guyana, we have now an initiative. His Excellency President Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali gave an instruction, and that is now a policy of the Ministry of Agriculture, that all projects coming out from the Ministry of Agriculture must include 35% women and youth. Women and youth must be part of that 35%. We are now making young people shareholders of company because what we found that there is a lack in the interests of agricultural activity. We heard my colleague from Bolivia just mention, but how we can put innovative ways, how we could capture young people's imagination into the system. Young people has a different perception on agriculture. They feel agriculture is a menial job. Agriculture is for their foreparents and the people who never went to school. We have to change that perspective. And how we can change that perspective is to make agriculture more attractive. We have thousands of young people passing through university and agriculture school. For example, in Guyana, we have the Guyana School of Agriculture where we turn out hundreds of young people every year. The University of Guyana where young people comes out with agronomy degree, but they are not interested in agriculture, they're doing other things. They are a pen pusher behind a desk. How we can engage them? We came up with ideas. We formed a company called the Agriculture Innovation Entrepreneurship Program, where we are now having young people to be shareholders of these companies, where we are modernizing the agriculture system, where AgriConnect will play an important role in this part of the initiative that the President would have set up. And today we are finding, with this innovative idea from His Excellency, a lot of young people now who would have passed through the Guyana School of Agriculture and the University of Guyana, the University of the West Indies, are now in agriculture, doing the work and earning their livelihood from agriculture. This is the way we have to capture the imagination of young people. So youth will play a very important role, and we have to reposition agriculture. We heard just now that agriculture is one of the most complicated sectors. Why? Because it encompasses different stakeholders, fisher folks, farmers in different fields, rice farmers, sugar workers, people. Some of those people don't have the kind of training to be in agriculture. That is why it's a very complicated sector. And as leader in agriculture, we have to capture these people's imagination to bring them into the sector. And there where this AgriConnect is important. In Guyana, we are placing now, and as I said, we are placing to digitalize the agriculture sector. We already created a farmer app where farmers can go and get all the information they need on agriculture, the weather, the land, what type of soil exists in this area. These are things that help farmers to connect into agriculture. So we have to reposition agriculture not as a sector of last resort, but as one of innovation, technology, and opportunity. Those are the three words that we have to use to move the sector forward. And as chairman of the Ministerial Task Force in CARICOM, I emphasize that regional collaboration is not optional. It is imperative for us in the region. No single country can achieve food security alone, but together as a unified Caribbean community, we have the resources, the knowledge, and the capacity to succeed. AgriConnect presents a valuable opportunity for us in the Caribbean. Its success in the Caribbean will depend on how effectively we align ourselves with our regional strategy, bring us together. How boldly we act, how we embrace this technology, and how committed we remain to collective progress in the region. We have a very ambitious target of reducing the food import bill by 25%. The first target was 2025. When we finish at the end of 2025, when we look at the progress in the region, we have made tremendous progress, but we did not reach it, and we have extended it now with the heads of government in CARICOM, extended it to 2030. From the time of implementation to now, the region has moved tremendously. And with the new technologies that we are implementing, with the kind of partnership we are forging as a region, I am very, very optimistic that come 2030, all member states within CARICOM will move aggressively to achieve this objective. As I said, at many forums, at many functions, the time for rhetoric, the time for discussion has passed. Now is the time for coordinated and decisive action. And what we are seeing here, we are seeing now that we have the tools to use these tools to forge that partnership and make that decisive decision to move this region forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. Y ahora le paso la palabra.
I would like now to give the floor to Juan Carlos Vega of Ecuador. Please, you have the floor. Thank you very much. It is a pleasure to be with you, and I would like to thank IICA and the World Bank Group. It's nice to see ALASA, the IDB, to see IFAD, and all the ministers here present. That is what we need. We have seen efforts that have led to successful efforts, and sometimes efforts that have not been quite as fruitful. But over the last 20 years, we've been working much in this very important sector. It is our hope in Ecuador that AgriConnect will become the project that allows us to have a network amongst the different actors in the sector to ensure that we make the necessary progress, to ensure that our smallholders really can connect to the markets and that this becomes a tool to leave poverty behind. Poverty in the rural sector is mainly affecting women and young people. The young people who are unable to find employment. In Ecuador, we have 350,000 young people graduating from high school who are unable to go to university and who seek opportunities in other sectors. And we believe that the agricultural sector will be very important for them. In Ecuador, we are working with vocational schools focusing on agriculture that is helping spark that interest in a rural and agricultural life. Many teachers who were focusing on cattle, raising, agriculture, and fisheries were already retired 10 years ago. But now we are rethinking our curriculum. We're trying to generate that interest. We want children to know where food comes from. This is a very important sector for our countries. In Ecuador, it is a key sector. I previously worked as the Minister of Economy and Finance. And this sector has allowed us to be a country that uses dollar as our currency because it is important for import and export. And in fact, agriculture is even more important than oil. Non-oil exports have grown significantly in the last few years. Despite being one of the smallest countries in South America, we are one of the main exporters of bananas. And we also play an important role in the export of cocoa, and we also have an important shrimping export sector. And so we nonetheless have many challenges to overcome. We have to ensure that those smallholder farmers and producers who work in fishing as well and are far off in the Andes don't make sure they have the access to financing. Agriculture, fishing are about 9% of our production, but we hope that it goes to 20%. So we are feeding over 300,000 people within Ecuador itself, but we are one of the main producers of food in Ecuador. We are a lot of sunlight because we are right on the equator, and we also have a high access to water and soil per capita, which allows us to export to the world. But of course, that challenge has a lot to do with traceability, resilience, and adaptation to climate change. The de-risking and insurance is something that we have been talking about with my colleague from ALASA. This will allow us to face different challenges, such as El Nino, that is expected later this year. And Alfonso might be surprised to see me working in agriculture, given that I've worked in other sectors. But for our countries, agriculture is key. And we have a quite dynamic private banking in Ecuador. However, it has not focused on agriculture. One of the obstacles is, of course, the lack of farming insurance. That, in a way, we will be able to ensure that small producers can pay back those loans. This affects women, especially. The role of women in agriculture is key. And young women are further excluded from financing in the sector. So we need to de-risk this through insurance and certain government guarantees. These are all very important topics to ensure that we can accelerate production, access to technology, access to financing for those who work in the rural sector. We are eager to see AgriConnect implemented, to go from talk to action. We want to see results. As a country, we have prioritized the work with the FAO, with IFAD, and with IICA. We believe there are certain areas in Ecuador that should have even greater priorities. We're talking about generative cattle raising, fisheries, and cacao. We also have other fruits other than bananas. We have cranberries, so we have pitaya or dragon fruit. So we need to focus on what they do. We would also like to strengthen cooperation, south to south. I believe we should not solely focus on developed or underdeveloped countries. We should work with Honduras, with Chile. We should share our successful experiences. We are very similar in many matters. We should not fear bilateral exchanges. We import beef from Bolivia, for example, and we probably can send there shrimp and other things they do not have. But we should not fear trade with countries near us. We should also work more on technical cooperation. Given that we are so similar, I believe that implementation could also grow. Again, I would also like to thank you all for this space. Thank you for all the support, and we are eager to ensure the success of AgriConnect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister Juan Carlos Vega. I wanted to share that the Director General of IICA has stated that this would be implemented in the midterm. It has been noted that we must, of course, answer all countries how we work with the women and young people in the rural sector. They must be able to remain and also go back to the land. And we will be working on that. Thank you. Now, we would like to give the floor
the passion for the reggae music. The Minister of Jamaica, please.
Honorable Ministers or Vice Presidents from the World Bank and members of the World Bank team, or DG from the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, regional and international partners, members from the FAO, IDB, ALASA, IFAD, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, everybody. I brought you good weather, so you should answer.
Thank you.
On behalf of the government of Jamaica, I really want to extend my sincere appreciation to the World Bank and IICA for convening this important AgriConnect Latin American and Caribbean Roundtable. I want to thank Minister Zulfikar, who presented a Caribbean, CARICOM perspective, and I join in his comments in relation to the region. Jamaica is really pleased to participate in this engagement, which we believe provides a valuable opportunity for us to share our priorities, to see how we can deepen collaboration, and to explore practical avenues for implementation. Clearly, as we try to support a more modern, resilient, and inclusive agricultural sector. In June 2023, the President of the World Bank, President Banga, as part of his country tour, visited Jamaica. And the first place we brought him to was a project that was financed by the World Bank, where we had built about 20 greenhouses for smallholder family farmers on land that was formerly mined for bauxite, land that a lot of people had given up on. And we transformed those mining pits into water harvesting facilities. And the president interacted with all the farmers there. And I remember he went to one female farm and asked her, what did this mean for her? And she said it gave her the ability to send her children to college without debt. And as such, she was grateful for the opportunity. I start there because sometimes as we think about the numbers, we may detach the fact that what we're really talking about are people across our various countries that are depending on the conversations that we have in these rooms to lead to action and a better way of life for them on the ground. And even as we celebrated the novelness of the project, we thought, how could we replicate this project without having to depend on government financing? How could we get the private sector to expand this project? The president also said in his prepared remarks that with our climate vulnerabilities in the space of 3 hours, this project could be no more. And as fate would have it, on October 28th, Hurricane Melissa came, which is the largest Category 5 hurricane to make landfall, and significantly destroyed our greenhouse cluster in content. And the question is, do we have the financial capacity and innovative financial solutions to provide things like insurance so that we can bounce back stronger from those climate realities? I'll share a quote from the president at the visit. He said, the world requires food security, growing food at the right quality, getting the right compensation for it, being able to earn a living out of it, and changing the lives of your children and family as a first priority. For us, the AgriConnect provides an all-hands-on-deck approach to comprehensively address the ecosystem that has traditionally restricted the smallholder family farmer from their maximum impact. And as such, we join in celebrating the move towards this initiative. Jamaica, as a small and vulnerable economy, is exposed to significant climate-related risk. And to address this reality, the government is investing significant resources and is taking a policy-based approach to embed climate resilience in our agricultural financing, our developmental strategies, including investments in irrigation expansion, water harvesting systems, climate resilient farm road infrastructure, and stronger extension services. But to be successful, it requires, as Vice President Susanna said, a big tent approach, which leads to fundamental change. And this is why we've prioritized our partnership with our developmental partners. And this is why we look forward to AgriConnect. For us, agricultural insurance.
I'm sorry, Mr. Minister.
No,
a technical failure.
I sound so good in Spanish.
But he was anxious to say hello to you.
So agricultural insurance is critical for us. We have already worked with the private sector in Jamaica, and we do have one company offering agricultural insurance. But how do we scale that up? You know, I often comment to my farmers coming out of Hurricane Melissa. We have over 200,000 registered farmers. 120 of them got payout from Hurricane Melissa. If the entire 200,000 were registered, all would have gotten a payout from Hurricane Melissa. So we hope that AgriConnect will help us to treat with these high-level risks associated with farming, particularly in light of our frequent climate shocks, and provide other avenues for agricultural insurance. Value chain development is also critical, and we believe that the drive of AgriConnect to strengthen linkages between farmers and agribusinesses, including our agro-processors, is critical. We lose about 30 to 40% of what we produce. In fact, despite going through a significant Category 5 hurricane, because we've been building resilience, the complaint that I have to treat with now is, what do I do with this excess produce, considering that our tourism sector has not yet rebounded. So the need for greater linkages and storage is critical. Training and capacity building must be front and center. Again, practical training, like expanding our farmer field school models that show farmers what difference can be made in adopting climate-smart technologies. Not just tell them, show them by establishing more model farms, we think is critical. You would have heard Minister Zulfikar speak about technology, and I think it is critical that across the region, for us, AgriConnect can make a significant impact if we drive the digital transformation of agriculture, including improved data systems, digital agricultural platforms, climate and market intelligent tools. Some of them we already have. We do have a wonderful agri-linkages platform. We do have extension service mobile application so that farmers can have extension services at their fingertips. We do have some information systems, but we don't truly have access to big data. And I do feel like AI is leaving our agricultural sector across the Caribbean behind. And we believe this is an area that AgriConnect can help in a big way. I am very happy that AgriConnect will seek to drive private sector participation and innovation in agricultural financing. We are small economies. We have known our banks, our financial sector are risk averse. They are not putting money into our smallholder farmers. We have to change that reality. So I believe through AgriConnect, with stronger collaboration with government, our developmental partners, financial institutions, agribusinesses, and technology providers, we can build a sector that is bankable and commercially viable and clearly resilient, and support the livelihoods through improved insurance products, greater access to technology, and more effective responses to environmental risks. We expect that AgriConnect will significantly contribute to the life and livelihoods of our farmers and our fisher folks. And for us, this aligns directly with our national priorities. But as I close, I will remind us that the challenges that we face are not new. You know, my grandfather, Arthur Stanley Neal, used to call him Roots. He was born in 1924, and he complained about these issues up until he passed in 2013. And he could not say that he saw any fundamental change to our agri-ecosystems. As such, the action plans have to do that. They have to bring action, not talk. For Jamaica and for the region, we commit that the governments will play its part. The change, however, will take all the organizations here, and they have to truly work together in streamlining what is done, not duplicating, in complementing each other, not contradicting, in accelerating and expanding, not piloting. Our region has been piloted out. We know what works. Let's expand what works in a real way. So let us truly ensure that we have access, connectivity, and finance for that smallholder family farmer who is looking to send her or his children to school debt-free. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Green. Y ahora le paso la palabra al secretario de...
Now, give the floor to Mr. Moises Abraham Molina. Thank you, Chair, guests, colleagues, Your Excellencies. It has been very enlightening to hear you all as the first remarks were shared and then as my colleagues spoke. I could not help but think about how we've addressed this topic from different perspectives with different tools in the past. However, we've not achieved the results we now hope to get. We have talked and we continue to talk about clusters and value chains. And in fact, we saw how we've analyzed the different relationships between the various actors. However, the results we've achieved so far have been partial and lacking. We have been able to include one or two actors into the chain, but not all of it as a whole. AgriConnect allows us to do it in a deep and definitive manner. How is it that we did not think about this before? Well, I would say that we did think about it. However, we were unable to have a shared vision, to work closely together. We have been unable to work with solidarity, empathy, and as partners. We do not only have to include the actors, but also the new contexts. We have to include issues such as the climate change, which is not kind to us, and the competitivity. We no longer have to leave our countries because the open markets bring competitivity into our countries. We also have to be socially and environmentally responsible. There's changes that are continuous and have accelerated. This is something that must be included in any effort we undertake. AgriConnect could be the way to get there. I would say that I feel very enthusiastic about this new possible reality thanks to this initiative. At the same time, I would be denying this characteristics. We do not just have to be enthusiastic, we must participate. All of us must make this a reality. Perhaps it will be more appropriate to say that we feel optimistic. We are thinking about how we will use the initiative to ensure that what we're proposing becomes a reality. I don't want to say too much, but I would like to say that it is good to talk about technology, to talk about financing, to talk about everything we have mentioned. However, if we want to rescue family farming, if we want to ensure that farming is inclusive and that young people find opportunities there, we must ensure that we put money in the farmer's pocket. That is the only thing that will make farming possible and sustainable. I wish to congratulate all those who have made this possible and include Honduras in the activities that will lead us to a successful implementation. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, señor ministro.
Thank you very much, Minister. And now, would love for you to see this 3-minute video that the Minister of the Dominican Republic sent on his behalf, and all the agriculture ministers from Central America, because they're in a meeting in Santo Domingo, and they were not able to attend. Let's put on the video. Thanks.
A las autoridades del Banco Mundial y del IICA centroamericano a propósito de la iniciativa sin precedentes.
The interpreter regrets not being able to interpret, but the sound is coming out doubled. As Minister of Agriculture of the Dominican Republic, I would like to extend my warmest greetings to the authorities of the IICA and the World Bank. Thank you for the invitation to attend the launching ceremony of AgriConnect, an unprecedented initiative that seeks to transform smallholder farming, create employment, and strengthen food security on a world scale. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to make the trip, but I would like to take this opportunity to reiterate my country's commitment to this unprecedented initiative. Thank you to the World Bank and for the IICA for their commitment to agriculture in the hemisphere at one of the most critical standpoints on a global level. AgriConnect's objective of supporting 300 million of smallholder farming by 2030 and promoting a transition of subsistence systems to more sustainable and efficient systems and better connected to the markets is the response that our countries need at this moment. I would like to finish by saying congratulations again to the IICA and the World Bank for this wonderful initiative. You have our full support. Thank you very much.
Gracias, señor ministro. Señores ministros, dando por terminada esta.
Well, we are going to conclude this very fruitful conversation. Please join the main table, because we will sign the agreement between the IICA and the World Bank. And we have the honor of counting on ministers' signatures who will bear witness to this document. Thank you so much.
So I just wanted to and thank everyone for joining us on the event and for the wonderful moderation. And just say a couple of final words. We really appreciated to hear, and Alfonso was saying the same thing, along with our IICA colleagues, just from every minister. For me, I've been taking copious notes. It's been, I have to say, I've gone through the notebook, and it's just a tour de force. Like, we go around and really get deeply into each of the countries. So I really appreciate the different perspectives from the different countries, and there was a lot that resonated throughout. but there were also very distinct perspectives, the macro-fiscal perspective with agriculture, Bolivia, new government coming in, Guyana thinking about the region together with Jamaica, Jamaica with the resilience angle, so the DR overcoming recent challenges, and I thank the minister for having taped this for this event, Honduras with the pressing need and demand for us to go into action. So I hope I mentioned everyone because some of the signs, but I do want to get, because I think bottom line, I wanted to make 3 points quickly. One is, I'm not going to repeat what everyone has said, but I think Alfonso's comments, and it resonated with the ministers, that access, connectivity, and finance really summarize what we have here in terms of the design of the platform. What the Minister Molina said, that we need to get to action, I think it's really true. And I think that depends on a couple of things. One is capabilities. I think most comments mentioned the need for more skills in agriculture. Either there's skills but then no interest, or there are skills but they're yet incomplete. So I think really honing in, and that's central to the initiative, the question of building this foundational capability so that we can get to action quickly. But I think the second point related to the first is results. I think we need results. And my dream would be to have a meeting like this next year, and I talked to Afonso while we were here, and we can track results. It would be great if we could have an executive meeting with everyone that's here around the table and really have something to show. Have concrete KPIs that we can track in terms of what are we accomplishing within and across countries. So I put out this request so that we can all co-create and think about how we can measure our progress going forward, so that it's not dialogue. I mean, dialogue is a means to the end, but the end that we're celebrating our results in these meetings. And then my last point was just, in today's global context, I think we have challenges, both regional and globally, in terms of high food, fuel, and fertilizer prices. And this price pressure leaves farmers exposed, and most importantly leaves, like our colleague in Jamaica said, it leaves people without access to healthy diets. So putting that front and central in terms of motivating our call for action and results, especially at this critical juncture of the region and the world in which these critical fuel and oil prices are really translating into food prices and food security, I think is central to the agenda. And here, the lessons of the past are extremely important. We've been in situations, as you all know, before, and the lessons show that we have to keep food affordable, keep farmers farming, keep food flowing. Trade across borders is essential, and focusing on the most vulnerable populations. So targeting those and keeping those center is essential. So count on us all in terms of our tools to be able to help you navigate this period now and build on for the future by investing also in longer-term resilience through our agri-food systems and tackling the root causes of poverty, insecurity, inequality, and tackling the challenge that we have at hand. So with this, I wanted to turn to my colleague at IICA to see if you have any final remarks.
Okay. Thank you. First, let me thank the ministers as well as the IDB, FAO, and IFAD, Alaska for the comments, which are very important for us, considering that IICA is in the process of rolling out a new medium-term plan, and also the importance within this AgriConnect context of how do you move from a call to action and what the Minister Green mentioned about going from pilot scale to more to more scalable actions that you have. And those have been challenges, and AgriConnect presents an opportunity for moving in that direction. Science, technology, and innovation is one of the key areas we are putting more emphasis, and we have had discussions with the IDB and also what Minister Mustafa mentioned about importance within the Caribbean region and building the cooperation in this area. I must say there has been emphasis in the discussion about having more on digital agriculture and artificial intelligence, but there are basic issues in science and technology, which my colleague Lloyd, we have been discussing about the importance of having farmers good quality seeds and better genetics, and I think those are how do we combine the sciences and innovation, and IICA playing an important role in providing these services, as well as strengthening the extension services that we need, integrating the technical schools and using more a hybrid model for having a cascading effect on transformation of the information that we have. So IICA have a program on digital agriculture, but also emphasis on youths and agriculture with women, with experiences which they are good learning experiences in the Caribbean and different regions, in the Andean southern cone as well as in Central America, where we're working, and we can collate this information and see what are the enabling conditions that we have in terms of having impacts, and how AgriConnect can use this information together with what our colleagues from IFAD and FAO and other organizations have mentioned about the experiences. So how to build on the baseline information we have in existing context for the implementation so that you have a learning curve, a faster implementation, understanding this context. I think de-risking is going to be important. We always mention about climate change, but there is more than climate change. We just conclude discussions around the supply chain and distortions. And if you look at the tendencies over the last year, the price and cost for inputs have been increasing, which means the marginal returns from getting small farmers have been diminishing over time, and therefore we need to understand the multiple risk factors farmers are facing, especially small farmers, and especially what have been mentioned in terms of having agriculture insurance schemes or other incentive systems that would de-risk the whole system, including the finance systems. Now, AgriConnect has a hypothesis of job creation. I must say I've visited many countries, and already they don't have labor to harvest the crops. I just came back from Chile. Bolivia has been many cases, and I think that's an issue where we need to look at how to have a reinsertion of youths from the urban to the rural areas, but having agriculture as playing an important role for dignified work being offered. And I think those are also some of the social issues that we need to look at and address in looking at these issues. So once again, I'd like to thank the World Bank for including us in the participation, and also to continue our cooperation, building the partnerships with the private sector, with public-private sector, and the farmers' organization is key for moving this forward. Thank you very much.
Les pedimos entonces a los señores.
We would like to ask the ministers and Juan Carlos to please approach the main table to sign the agreements. Thank you.